Welcome to the morning meeting with Sarah and Jess.
Where the tea is hot, the wine is chilled, and no topic is off limits. Pull up a chair and join us. There is room for all of you here.
We won't limit seating, we'll just build a bigger table. Let's begin today's meeting.
So, first of all, I'm wheeled out post-op. Yeah. In the recovery room with these flimsy ass tents in between. It's just like curtains in between.
Curtains in between the
Right.
gurneys.
Next
So,
to people who
I'm-
just did a similar process to you.
Right, and we don't know.
Or is about to go in.
Okay, okay.
Or are on their
Right.
on their third try.
Right.
We know nothing about
Right.
them, right? So, but Hayley got 42.
Oh,
I was one off.
oh,
And my mom joked that it's probably still like she knew. Like,
Isn't that like unheard of?
it's
Like that many?
I've never heard of it, but I don't know what's the like. I don't know if that's we don't know anyone who's ever had
Wow.
that.
That's
Like that's insane. Yeah.
And
because walk
we
us through
got
it. Like when they're named, like they're shouting out the numbers.
Yeah, like, what are you
"Oh my-
doing?"
What? What? You're still
13.
counting?
Yes, that's exactly what I was like.
Well,
I was
I
like,
got
how is
wheeled
this
out.
still real life?
I got wheeled out and they were still counting after I got
Like when
wheeled
we
out.
left the room, they might have been at 20, high 20s. And then we got the
Wow.
final count when we were back at the other.
And then
thing.
she's like, I'm going to tell you your final count, but there's someone on this side and someone on this side, so don't react.
Well, she didn't tell me that. So when she told me,
Basically,
she was
said
like
that.
counting them out like on her fingers, and I was like 42, and then I felt terrible later because I didn't like think about those.
But I
like,
mean,
you know
that's
what I
a
mean?
personal
But-
win. You have to celebrate,
and-
right? Like your
yeah,
environment.
and I certainly didn't.
Well, I could see them. I could see them.
At least count them every day. She knew 42.
Get out.
So yeah, and then so then now they got 5 days. They need to put the sperm in them. Next thing they do is they grade the eggs.
Okay.
So
we
they
got
look at
lucky
them.
there too.
They look at them and they give them like numbers, like
1 through 5.
1 through like 5 or 4.
1 through 4. Sorry.
4, and then so 4 is excellent, and then the A, B, A, kind of
Okay.
thing like that. So you
So
pick
about like the structure of the egg and all of the embryo, like of
I
the
guess they
egg. And
grade
all.
the embryos.
They grade the embryos, but they number the eggs.
So think about the eggs. The eggs, we got 42. Think about this, like kind of how this worked
Yeah.
out. We got 42, 23 divided. So that's how many.
So on day 0, that's when they pulled the eggs, and they were placed in an incubator for a few hours. And then we did the ICSI process where they took the strongest sperms and put them directly into each individual egg.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So they did that. So instead of having to do 42 vials of
Wow.
sperm,
Which we would never.
Right.
we would have
Yes.
never have done
You just
that.
pick the good.
Yeah.
We had our last vial of sperm of that 4 million. They took the strongest sperms of that and entered each
That's
individual
incredible.
egg with a sperm.
Right.
And of that, 23 divided.
Okay.
So they do a fertilization check at day 1.
Mhm.
And then at
They
day
call you.
2, they call you and they're like, well, this is how many made it past the 24-hour
Right.
kind of period.
And that was 23.
So we had 23.
And then the next day they called, and we were down to
Day 4 they called.
Yeah, and we were down to 11.
11.
Wow. 43 to 11.
Exactly.
Wow.
So imagine you only get a
Three,
couple.
Or like exactly.
6.
Exactly.
Like,
And then from
crazy.
there they grade the
Mm.
eggs, and then you choose which egg you're going to implant
Wow.
on day 5.
yeah.
And
so
the
on
other
day
thing about
5,
this is
they're called blastocysts. So they're ready.
Yeah.
So that you can either freeze them or fresh transfer them
Okay.
at that point.
So
And-
can you choose how many then that
so
they
here's,
So that's the
here's the
thing.
thing, okay? In Nova Scotia, I don't know if it's Nova Scotia or this particular clinic, you can do as many as 2.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like it's not like the Optimum.
So you're not gonna have a TLC show.
Where no. I mean, unless you have like 2 sets of
That go quads.
identical triplets
Right.
or something crazy. Yeah, like so so you choose 1 or 2. So when I was younger, like my young 20s or something, I had like dysplasia on the cervix, so I had to do one of those loops where they like kind of
Mm.
burn the cells off the outside.
Right.
And it was never an issue. That was it. Like it was all taken care of. But because of that, there was possibility that it did my cervix. So the chances of preterm, if I had multiples, was too high.
Right.
So we only implanted 1 for me.
Right.
But when Hayley, and just to say, we do have frozen embryos, 10 of them left.
Wow.
And Hayley will likely plan on Hayley carrying the next one.
We probably might do. We can't decide 1 or 2.
She'll have to decide 1 or 2 because we're
'Cause
taking
2 could
the
be
risk.
4.
Oh,
Or 2
Right.
could be 2, or 2 could be 2.
We'll talk
like
later
you know,
about
Sarah.
those options. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but your chances of being successful go up as well.
Right.
So
Right.
you go with that.
So was
then
choosing
day
one
5,
scary, or it wasn't because you had to make peace with it? It was your only option.
I didn't have a
It's only
choice.
your
only
She
option.
Julie
Yes.
didn't give me a
Right,
choice.
right.
It was the safest option for
Right.
her.
But I
and
know other
that
people
was
really struggle with
Right.
that decision.
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
so then we went in day 5. My uterus thickness was like 9 centimeters, millimeters. I can't remember, but it was like exactly where they wanted it to be. And we went to, there's like a really cool, I can't remember the name of it, the donut shop in Halifax.
Yes.
With like crazy-
Vandal.
Oh.
Vandal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Voodoo.
No, Voodoo's the one in
Vandal?
California. I think
Vandal?
Vandal
Vandal,
Donuts. I
okay.
think you're
Yeah.
right. We stopped there and got like
Couple boxes.
6
of donuts.
boxes of donuts and gave them to like the pharmacist and the person at the
Amazing.
front desk and the
You
nursing
two
team
are too
downstairs and the
much.
nursing team upstairs.
Yeah.
Well, we're just like, let's butter them up, make sure this goes right. So, so then I went in and they take this like little thing with the sperm in it and they just
First of all, he was wearing a Patriots scrub
Haley
hat,
was
and I
teasing
was
him
like,
about
"What is going
Wait a
on here with your
second.
Patriots
he
hat?"
was,
But
he was very
he
nice.
was
All the
lovely.
doctors there are amazing. And then they just like insert it and they press the button and this little flash happens on the screen and
They're like, "Okay,
They
it's done."
implant-
So that's
I
the
didn't have to
embryo,
get-
though, right? That's the egg
Yes.
fertilized by the sperm already.
and like I didn't have to, take medication or to get doped up, like to like
Mm.
not feel anything. Like
Okay.
they just drop it in and they're like, have a good drive to Cape Breton.
Wow.
Literally
So
I made
walk in the
Heather-
door.
I made Heather sit with her legs up the whole way home.
They
Like
said,
Yeah.
they said there's absolutely no scientific
Phoebe-
evidence
Phoebe
that
on
helps
Friends,
support
you're just
that,
like-
but we did it
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
We did it. They made me lay there for 20 minutes and then they were like, go. And then for 12 weeks after that, I had to keep taking the estrace
Estrace.
plus progesterone,
Yeah.
Progesterone.
which came as like 2
Pearls.
little, I called them my vagina pearls because they were 2 little pearl-like things that were suppositories that I had to put
Oh my
in my
god.
vagina 2 times, 2 of them 3 times a day
Oh my
for
gosh.
the first 12 weeks of pregnancy.
I mean, I'm sure that's not
You're
something
saying-
you forget, but like, how
So
do you,
that
are you
was
setting
awesome.
timers in your phone? Like pearl,
Yes.
pearl
Oh,
time.
alarms.
You would
Have
have
to
to.
set alarms on your phone.
Wow.
The nasal spray went off 5 times a day. The
Birth control.
estrace is
Wow.
another one.
It must have-
and all the dates. They
And
tell
then-
you take it till February 1st, till February 4th, and then stop taking this
When-
one. Take this one from.
Yeah.
So,
when you
You do have
were,
to write everything down.
when that part was done, like turning all those alarms off on your phone must have been the best feeling.
Yes. Yeah. And that was kind of
And,
anticlimactic, that kind
after
of actual
we-
insemination part.
Wow.
After we did the egg retrieval, like luckily it went really well because normally you would have 6 to 12 eggs in that process and then you might have to do the whole thing again if you
Wow.
want to try again.
Wow.
So like
Or-
luckily we have some in the reserve.
Or some people go through all of it,
Mm-hmm.
get to the day that they retrieve, and,
and
they
then
get
the
canceled.
lining's not thick
What?
enough.
So they cancel the cycle, and that must be
Like
devastating.
your lining,
Mhm.
Heather, like where it's being
Yeah,
in-
like
Well, the retrieval's
retrieval
not
didn't
going
go
well. They're not
well.
getting
Oh
to the
my
size, so they're going to
gosh.
cancel the cycle because it's not going to go right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So really, like the
So-
timing.
and that's
Mhm.
devastating. I can't. That's happened to a few of our friends, and it is devastating.
Yeah.
So really, like
And you don't get any of that money back or any
Right,
of that stuff.
right.
You got to just keep going forward and do another round. And I can't.
the
imagine.
timing
I was
of so
crying-
many things in your
Oh,
life
everything has to be a miracle.
have
Mhm.
gone right
Having
at the
a-
right time.
Yeah.
You know, for
But
both.
Not
a
of-
healthy little
alone.
baby in general is a miracle.
Yeah.
Like,
but not alone like all of that, like we were both working.
Right.
mhm.
Right.
Heather has a full caseload.
Right.
Like we're still doing all of
It's
the
weird to do life. On top of
Yes.
this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
On
That's
top of
right.
it.
It's all
Yeah, life
consuming.
goes on
Yeah.
and then you're
Yeah.
For those 12
yeah,
weeks.
like someone was asking me like, how's your day? I'm like, I don't think you really want to
Right,
know.
yeah.
right. Do you
pulling
really
the
want to
seat.
know or are you
Nobody
just
wants to
making
know.
small
I
talk?
have no
Yeah.
idea.
Like-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like those 12 weeks,
Yeah.
Heather, like that's your first trimester? Like, is that what we're talking?
Right,
Like that's
right.
So then at what point can you take a pregnancy test? Like when,
Well, they
So
tell
we
you-
made a pact that she wasn't gonna do one until we did a blood test.
Well, they tell you do not check yourself in the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
So you wait 2 weeks
Okay.
and then you do a blood
Okay.
test. And they said like you can have because of, well, it was less of a chance with us because Hayley they didn't put it back in her body.
Right.
So
But
it
there's
wasn't a higher
chance
risk of
false
rejections
positives
and
or false negatives.
because you have all the hormones
'cause all
pumping
these,
through your system.
yeah, right. So your numbers might come back high, and it might just because I'm taking these
Oh,
vagina pearls.
right.
I don't know, like, you know what I'm saying?
Vagina pearls.
So
I would say it's on the box, like vagina pearls.
You should patent
Yeah.
that. Is there
Yeah.
like an idea out there for vagina
Yeah.
pearls?
well, and you guys are gonna laugh so hard. So like 2 weeks came and we were waiting on that day. I took the blood test in the morning and they said they'll call us by the afternoon. So I stayed home from work. Haley's at work. They did the blood work and then the clinic would call me later. And Hayley went to work and I was like waiting and like freaking out and like all that stuff. And it was during the pandemic. So I had the lady come
So
to
I
our
couldn't
house.
go to the first
do
appointment.
blood work.
wow.
Yeah. And so the lady
So
I
hard.
was like, didn't want to go to the hospital. So I paid the woman to come. You could do blood work at
Yeah.
your house for like $25.
She
which
was
totally
lovely, by
worth
the
it for
way.
us. She was lovely.
Mhm.
Joanne. Yes. Anyway, so she came in, did the blood test, and like all I wanted to do was pee on the stick because we could have like we
Mhm.
just like
Yeah.
and so there was a text with like team
Oh.
leads. It was Hayley,
Like
and
our
the
group
team
work
leads at
text.
work.
Yeah.
And I by mistake texted the
No!
group instead of, and it was only like 2 other people that we like are really good friends with and then kind of knew we were going through the process, so it wasn't like a big deal. But I texted the group and I was like, it's taking everything in my power not to pee on the stick right now. That's what I wrote. That's what I wrote.
and
And Hayley wrote back,
and she's like,
Heather, group text.
Oh my god.
she's like the supervisor at work,
Yes.
like the doctor.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my
like
God.
Dr. Rutterham.
Anyway.
Yeah. Pee on the
Yeah.
stick.
Yeah.
Here,
So-
this is the video.
We just found out that we're pregnant. And I'm just so excited, so happy. I can't believe it. I'm proud of her for sticking this out and not taking the home pregnancy test and waiting for the real results.
Oh,
Haley's definitely an impulsive one in our relationship. Like if it was her, we would have taken our pregnancy
Yeah,
test like 16 times in 14 days.
oh my gosh.
So we got the call and I got to call Hayley. She was on her way home from work. And then we called our parents and told them, and that was really fun. And then
Did you pee on
and
the
then
stick?
as you I didn't need to pee on the
Yeah.
stick, but we did anyway,
Yes,
just
of
to be sure.
course.
Yeah.
For a couple days.
Yes, every day
Yeah.
I peed on that stick. Yeah.
And yes, and as you guys know, well, maybe you don't know, but I think it's a common experience. The first 12 weeks are like excruciatingly slow.
Yes. So
The rest
Yes.
of the pregnancy flew
Yes.
by, but like getting through that kind of danger
yes.
area.
Yes.
Right.
It's looming.
around-
And especially if you don't have a lot of symptoms, and it's
Right.
like you're just doing anything
And I
to
wasn't.
just
I had a wonder. wasn't nauseous.
Right.
I wasn't like.
Were you
I-
tired though? Did you feel that?
I was
Yeah, you
exhausted,
felt that
yeah.
tired.
So
Yeah.
we work a couple doors down from each other. And so like I would go in her office at like 4:00 and she'd be like,
4 o'clock was
I
like
have to
a
lie on the
wall. that I
Yes.
hit.
Yeah.
I just
Like-
had to. So I was laying
like-
on my couch, like waiting for Hayley to be done
Yeah.
work. Well, my friend Amy was so cute. She was like, "You're poopa," and I'm like, "What do you mean? Pregnant until proven
Yeah.
otherwise?" Like when we didn't know. So that's a common term, poopa.
Poopa, I
Pregnant
love
until
that.
PUPA.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at 8 weeks, I had like some spotting and some
Wow, so
bleeding. So
scary.
that was like so
Very
stressful.
stressful.
So scary.
And-
yeah, but no one talks about it. And apparently it is extremely
Yeah,
Well,
I
it
had
ended
it.
up being a couple of placental hematomas where like it just I guess the placenta comes away from the uterus a little bit, causes some bruising and
right.
bleeding. And for some people, like it can last the whole 9 months.
Yes.
Like
Oh,
for some
really? I
people.
didn't know that.
Like,
Yes.
And so I didn't know that either. And so it was a Sunday. So I went to the hospital and I had to
Yeah.
wait.
Of course.
And
Which isn't that process awful?
the
You should
doctor
be in your own
came-
room, not in the ER, like waiting room.
Yes,
You know, that whole thing.
Yeah. The doctor came in and was like, well, the cervix is still closed, so we don't know for sure. And somebody told me to push for a bedside ultrasound,
Yeah.
just to like make sure. So like I pushed them to do it, and then the doctor came in and couldn't find anything on the ultrasound. So then that
Ugh.
really made me panic.
Oh,
So I had to wait till the next day to go actually get an ultrasound. And the ultrasound tech found it in like 2
Yes.
seconds. She was like, just because they're
Mm.
doctors doesn't mean they know how to do
yes.
ultrasounds.
Right.
Yes.
So, like,
Right.
So true.
And so it was fine, but the bleeding kept on for a couple more weeks. And like our doctor like is very balanced and saying like, as long as the cervix closed, like we still have the chance, but you got to prepare something good.
Right.
Like it might not go well. I called the clinic at Art and they're like, oh no, you're fine. That happens to like a lot of people and all that stuff. So it's like these two kind of extremes.
Yeah.
And then I found other people who have had the same
Yeah.
experience. So
But Hayley, you're right. That's one of those things that we don't often talk about. And so when you see blood or you have that feeling, you're like, this is the worst thing ever.
Right.
And you just go off that cliff, like your emotions, it's
Right.
hard to bring yourself down to like, wait, this could be normal. And
right.
I mean, in the moment, you're so emotional about it anyway that maybe that rationale wouldn't talk you down. But at least if you
Right.
had some level of like, this can happen and it can be
Yeah.
okay. It could happen and it
Right.
might not be. But
Mhm.
if
Right.
you knew
Mhm.
that going in, right, it's hard to keep yourself
Mhm.
leveled in that emotion,
Right.
Right.
especially in this
And it
And
situation.
wasn't-
like, don't ever Google that.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
Right.
Exactly.
It's like,
I found some like blogs of people telling their story and I was like, and everything was fine. And like the babies were unaffected
Right.
actually, stuff like that.
on
But
top of it, she had to do it all by herself.
Because you weren't allowed
Like,
in.
I had to sit in
Right.
the parking lot. I was
Oh my
like sitting on FaceTime and
gosh.
she was like, okay, I have to put the phone down. The doctor's coming. And like,
and like
like-
that was the other thing that was frustrating. And actually I don't begrudge any single person who's doing their job and following their
Right.
rules. But some
Right.
of the ultrasound people would let me go on FaceTime and others would absolutely not.
Right.
Mhm.
And like, and I understand that it was your comfortability with like
Mm.
what you feel is
With the
okay, what's
protocol,
not okay,
yeah.
and I understand that
Yeah.
and all of that, but that made things very hard.
Yes. The
Absolutely.
inconsistencies.
It's a
in that
whole nother
system is
level
just-
to it, like a whole
it's
nother layer.
Yeah.
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 Right.
and like
It's-
coming from the American system, like you pay for what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like,
And I
Hayley.
will say that
Like,
is one thing that I
so-
felt very grateful for Haley, because I do find maybe especially in Cape Breton,
Right.
we are so desperate for family doctors and
Yeah.
as in America,
I
it's
said
the
why?
opposite.
well, wait,
You're a
wait, wait. We gotta
consumer.
talk about why
Yeah.
you're making these
Yeah,
decisions
like
and
in America,
what you're
you're a
doing.
consumer.
Because
Yeah.
like,
So it was
we,
very
like-
nice to have Haley there saying, no, that's not acceptable. We
Right.
want to do this. And I just,
Right.
I don't know if I would have had, I just would have said, oh, well, you know best.
And in
Yeah.
this context, having someone who was used to that advocacy, like being able to advocate
Right.
and not feel uncomfortable with that advocacy
Right.
Not at
because we
all.
weren't
Yes.
conditioned to
Right.
do that. I don't know about you, Heather, but in every pregnancy following that, and for Bo's whole pregnancy, I couldn't go to the bathroom without being like, is everything
Checking
okay?
all the time.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
and waking up 4 or 5 times in the middle of the
Exactly.
night just to go
Exactly.
check,
The
like-
stress of like seeing what's on the toilet paper. I never
Yeah.
cared what was on the
Right.
toilet paper before that
Right.
until
Oh, I
you had that
know.
experience.
And then it would heal
Mhm.
up a little and I'd be like, it's done. And then it would start up
Yeah.
again. And it lasted till about 12 weeks for me. And then it healed
Yeah.
up and I never had any more
Yeah.
problems, luckily. But,
Amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
But yeah, what an
Yeah.
experience.
I was, yeah. And I mean, even when you think about, yeah, and I was saying this to Sarah, how like growing up, knowing I was a straight woman,
Yeah.
even like when I was like a kid, you just think I'll have kids.
Yep.
Whether or not I knew it, I was just like, that's what I'll do. And until I got older, I didn't actually realize that that wasn't a guarantee.
Right.
Right. Right.
Like I'm a woman, I'm going to marry a man and we're going to make a baby.
Yeah.
And I just thought that everyone that didn't have babies, it was just their choice.
Right.
They didn't
Oh,
want
they
to.
don't, they just,
Yeah.
they didn't want to have kids.
Mhm.
But then as I got older and my friends and my cousins started having all of these issues, I thought like, okay, first of all, what a privilege
Uh-huh.
for just to be a woman, because that's barriers gone,
Uh-huh.
you know? And then I'm gonna not that I'm a woman, but I'm a woman who's interested in men. So there's one barrier.
Mhm.
But then the other part is it's not guaranteed
No.
at all.
No.
Like it's just
A friend of mine
blows my
said
mind how
they- Yeah, I know. You're so right. And a friend of mine, when they were trying to get pregnant, she said, it's so funny because she tried for a year. It ended up working out great for them. But she said, like, when we were in high school, we thought if we even
Yes.
touched a penis, we were definitely
Right.
gonna be
Yes,
instantly
Heather.
pregnant.
if
and
you
then
hadn't known,
you were definitely going to ruin your life.
Yes.
That's what they taught
Yes.
you.
it's actually so hard to get
That's
pregnant.
what I always
Like,
say is you spend like half of your adult life or the first half of it like trying to prevent it. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, hey, I want one now. And you just think it's going to happen.
Exactly.
yeah,
Like that's not the way it works.
yeah. It's oh my gosh.
You know that you have frozen embryos
So we have 10.
now.
Wow.
Yes.
So that means
We have 10.
sperm in the egg, eggs are fertilized. That whole
Right.
process
No.
is done.
Oh,
Right.
We never have to do that
So we
again.
never have to do the retrieval again,
Wow.
which is the bulk of the cost. That's what costs the most
Okay.
money. Like now it'll just be like probably between
$1,500
$1,000 and $2,000 to
Inseminate.
So
like,
Hayley,
put
you
the
don't have to
egg in.
go through any.
No, but no.
wow,
I did my
okay.
work. I did
So
my work.
now Hayley can carry.
Okay.
And we have a couple of chances, so hopefully it works out for us. And the other amazing thing is, well, because it was a geriatric pregnancy, there are some benefits. I got so many ultrasounds
Right.
and so many appointments.
Yeah.
And so many of you probably got that with twins too.
Yeah.
So so we went up to the IWK at 20 weeks, and there was this guy there that was like, and did the
Oh, this is
anatomy
amazing.
scan. And this guy is like an expert in the field. They do a lot of research up there
Yeah.
with this. And one of-
Neonatal like geneticist.
Right.
Cool.
And he said there's research coming out now that the environment that carries the egg, so the prenatal environment, has some determination on the expression
What
of the genes.
turns on and off the genes.
Like,
So not that you get
amazing.
that the egg would get my genes, but my environment will either turn
Turn on.
certain ones on or off.
Oh my god.
So like somebody
So we
else
both
could
made
carry
the baby.
exact same
Yeah.
thing and have a very different expression
wow.
of the kid. Yeah, that really blew our minds. We didn't.
That
know
is
part,
mind
so-
blowing.
yeah.
It's like
So
a
I felt even more like part of it.
yes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like I don't want to say it's like the wash in the womb is like saying like on off these
Yes,
genetic
exactly,
markers of
exactly.
like creating
Yeah.
this. Wow, that's incredible.
It is. Yeah.
I hope he has your temperament.
And your looks, it'll be perfect.
So sweet. So those are now in a
At the
At the
clinic,
clinic
they
you
store
use.
them, and you cost about $300 a year
Okay.
to keep them
wow
stored like properly.
Always a
Stuff.
cost.
Oh, everything.
and a
You would not
liability like
believe
that.
Every single thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
Oh,
got
Must be some
they have
trust there.
backup- They have some
backup
backups on backups on
generators
backups.
on
Yeah.
generators on. We had to sign all of these contracts
Right.
that said like.
Yeah, is there a
anything
legalese
happens-
about it that you need to bring
Uh-huh.
in like someone
And
who can
You have to like bequeath the eggs to each other. If
Yeah, like
someone-
if someone
You
dies.
have to like make sure that you said that she could have them if I passed away or she passed away.
so many
Not
decisions.
that you want to think about that. but
Yes, so
yeah.
many decisions you have to make. Processes that you've talked about and the ones that you will have to go through in the future. Are those covered? Like, are those insurable or are those that's out of pocket?
Yeah, the MSI stuff now. Well, you just pay the clinic for the fee for that, but like the actual medical procedures are now covered.
Like, what do you mean medical procedures?
Like the blood work, like all of the
Yeah,
like
normal
standard
things that are
stuff.
covered under MSI, but we
But
still
you just have to pay the
to
clinic
put the-
to unfold
but the
egg
transplant,
and-
like putting
Right.
it in.
yes,
Right.
transfer.
The
everything.
transfer.
They pay for that.
Okay.
None of that's covered, and
in Nova Scotia.
we've run out. Like,
Yeah, I
everything
don't
will
have
be out of
anything
pocket.
left.
Right.
But she doesn't need those expensive drugs for stimulating again
Right.
or retrieval.
Right.
So now it's just the estradiol. Oh, and the estrays and the progesterone, they were covered.
They were.
100%.
Okay.
It was just the
Because they have
injectables and all that
indications
stuff.
for other
Right.
diagnostic needs that they're just normal MSI on the
Right.
formula.
So
Yes.
can you explain or what your thoughts or opinions are on these drugs or these procedures being covered, being insurable? Is it that it's new and it hasn't been happening and drug plans need to be updated? Is it discriminatory? Is it
In my mind, I feel it is discriminatory. And like, particularly for same-sex couples or people that don't have everything, but also for couples who are struggling with fertility.
Right.
Like,
Or any
it shouldn't,
individual.
you shouldn't have to be affluent to be able to have the children that you
Right.
want to have, or to
Right.
get help with that.
Right.
Because we help with lots of different things
Right.
in the world, and some diseases are genetic and some are social. We
Right.
still, of course, fund that, and as we should.
Right.
You know, and by social, I mean like kind of sometimes in some ways self-inflicted.
Right,
I guess.
yeah.
Like we still cover people who smoke but end up getting lung
Right.
cancer, things like
Right.
that.
Right.
So like,
Right.
I think there's a possibility to do better. Ontario is the only province in Canada that they cover one round. Quebec used to cover 3, but they don't anymore.
And they had an even unique experience because they wanted to keep the French lineage alive. So there
They
was
were
more.
paying for more.
Oh,
Like, yes,
wow.
there's that
Wow.
incentive too. And in Quebec in general, I think there was a time, and it might be still there, with French couples getting more benefits if they have children and stuff like that. Because
Wow.
they're trying to keep the culture and that kind of
So
thing.
where does this start? Is this a provincially regulated
it needs to
thing.
be
It's not a
provincial, yes.
national. Yeah.
No,
So every
it's
province
provincial.
needs to be educated and updated on these.
Yes. And Nova Scotia does a tax
rebate.
I don't know if it's called a credit. It's some of it you can put in your taxes, but it's not close to what
Right.
we pay,
Mhm.
not even a little.
Wow.
So, and then you don't even think about adding in hotels and
Travel.
Right.
$3 to go in the parking garage 5
Right.
times a day when you got to go back and
Right.
forth to the clinic, back and forth to the clinic, like just even things like that,
Yeah.
like travel,
So
food,
it's
groceries, like
from the jargon to the actual like experience of going into the clinic to like I didn't see very many people that look like me
Right.
in the clinic. Like
Right.
most people that we ran into were heterosexual white couples that were having fertility
Right.
issues. Like there weren't a lot of other people that I saw, at least like from a BIPOC perspective of like,
Right.
let's get help in having babies
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like that was a whole other kind of perspective of like, I had to have a conversation with the doctors. Like you can't just overlook the fact that the egg is partially black. Like I'm half black
Right.
and half white. Like these are things that need to be taken into account when like I know Heather's a white woman and she gets the benefit of having all of those
Yes.
privileges of being a white
Right.
woman. But in actuality, when you're having a baby as a woman of color or as part of the BIPOC community, there's a lot of racism
Yeah.
and discrimination
in medical practice.
Yeah.
practice that's either conscious or subconscious that people don't even realize that is going on. So
Like
like
systemically speaking. Yeah.
Yes, and to the point where there's a very big study that just came out that like black babies
Babies
have a higher
are
chance of survival if they have black
black
doctors.
doctors.
Wow.
Yeah, and that
Holy-
black
And so like
babies have the
luckily
that-
I felt
their maternal health and care of black women and black babies, they still die at much,
Much
higher
higher rates.
mortality rates than white babies.
white babies. And so like I
Yeah.
felt comfortable bringing this to Dr. McMullen and being like, this isn't going to be us. I am not going to be another
Right.
statistic.
Right.
Asked her
To,
like, this
be
is
conscious
something
of
that
this.
you need to be on your
Right.
radar because I'm not slipping through the
Right.
cracks.
And
Yeah.
nobody chooses to have like, well, not I shouldn't say nobody, but vast majority of people with bias, it's because they're unaware of the
Unconscious, yeah.
bias.
Right.
So it works subconsciously in everything you're doing. And
Right.
we just ask, can you be conscious that this bias
Wow.
exists and to do something
Good
about
for
Right.
you.
it? And to
Yeah.
her credit, she was amazing,
She was amazing.
Yeah.
and took it exactly how we expected her to. And in all fairness, we felt very safe saying it to her because we knew that she
Exactly.
like
Right.
you know, there might have been other situations where we hadn't felt safe or comfortable
Or had to
do
go
those
in
things.
with like
Your
back
guard up,
being
yeah.
like
ready to
yeah,
fight.
Yeah.
like this is
Yeah.
I'm not only fighting for the health of my wife, but the health of our
Right.
child.
Just recently, there's a young black medical student out of America that wrote a whole book on wound care
Wound-
using black skin because there's none of the books
Wow.
that they learn from
That
that
are
you
with
see.
black skin.
This is what
Wow.
ringworm looks like on black skin, or this is what like
Wow.
you know what I mean. So that just gets missed so much. Or babies of color. Sometimes they're jaundiced and they don't see that because they don't
Right.
see what it looks like in their
Right.
colors.
Jesus.
So-
Was that something, well, you touched on it already, so maybe you already answered this because you said you knew you wanted the donor to have similar features to Heather, right? Like,
Right. And when we were considering using my egg early on, we would have done the same. We wanted to pick somebody of color.
for Haley.
for
Right. So
Haley. It
Right.
just
race,
ended up
Right.
working out the other
you
way.
were considering race in that situation, but knowing that you were
Yes.
going to use Haley's eggs, and you knew that the donor would have looked like Heather.
Right.
And
Just talk to us about your experience in the healthcare system as a lesbian couple.
Did you experience a heteronormative language environment like at every turn? Were people more cognizant of your relationship, or do you think there's still a long way to go in this system in terms of
Mhm.
language and
Mhm.
maybe it's not only in terms of heteronormative, but was race and culture considered too for you?
And we're on the Cabot Trail at a store and she asked to use the washroom and the woman told her they don't have a washroom. And then a white lady asked, well, we were still in the store and she told her
her
yes.
yes.
To the
my
bathroom.
God.
It was,
Are you
It's like-
serious?
and the problem is I find like what happens is
Oh my
white people
God.
are uncomfortable with that.
Right.
We're uncomfortable with to make excuses.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
oh no, that's probably not what happened. That's they
Right.
were probably something. And like, because that in and of itself is a microaggression. That's me saying, I feel uncomfortable with my white fragility.
Yes.
And so I'm going to try and pretend that that's not what's happening, because that'll make me feel better.
Right.
But that 100% invalidates her experience of, no, that's exactly what's
Right.
happening. And I
Right.
have to
And we
seem like
can't
the
even begin
crazy
to
person.
understand it.
No.
We have
And I
no
have to be the
idea.
crazy person who brings it up.
Right.
And that,
Or I'm the
Right.
crazy
and
person
then I'm
that
the
brings it
angry
up.
black woman.
Right.
And then I become the angry black
Right.
lady.
So like it
That's
becomes
Right.
this
losing my mind.
fulfilling process kind of thing. Like, and like as a lesbian couple, of course, we're always aware that that could happen to us because we're lesbians.
Right.
Like, however, it's important to note that I get to choose. I get to choose whether I tell people or come out or hold her hand in public. She
Right.
doesn't get to choose to take her skin off.
Right. Wow.
So like there is a
chills.
little privilege in that as well, of like we generally don't edit ourselves. We hold hands wherever we want. We do what we want to do. And I'd say 95% of the time I rarely meet bigots
Right.
in that sense.
Right.
We had a funny experience in California. Like we were looking for an apartment, and it was like an older gentleman, and he was renting out like a kind of like a separate house in the back, like a guest house, I guess, or something. So we went to look at it, and he could not figure us out. And like finally clicked in that like we were married. And then the first question he said was like, "Who drives?"
Oh.
And we were like, we were a little taken back, and I was like, "Well, whoever feels like it." And he said, "I'm just trying to figure out who the husband is."
Oh my God.
Because for some people, they're so
They had
steeped in
to
that
make it-
heteronormative experience.
Exactly.
It needs to make
It needs to
sense
make
in his
sense.
brain.
Yeah.
Of like,
Yeah.
exactly.
They need to have those traditional
So-
roles to box you in, right? Like to make sense of it.
And that's how we as humans operate,
Yes.
right? We have to put labels
Yeah.
on things and put them in
We
boxes that make us
categorize.
feel good.
Yeah.
And exactly. And it's part of surviving as a
Yeah.
human, and it also gets in the way.
That's right.
If we don't like look at those
Yeah.
biases and those like kind of undercurrents that are
And in
happening.
like communication, we would call that perception checking. Like if your perception of a
Right.
situation, you have to go through the process of perception checking because
Right. Which we rarely
no,
do.
exactly. We don't. We
Like,
feel like we
we
don't
don't
have time
think
to.
about
But
it.
as a
right?
person of color, I feel like I'm doing it all the
Right.
time.
Yeah, but we didn't have too many difficult, like I have to give shout out to the labor and delivery
They're
nurses and
incredible.
the ones on Mom and Baby. They're just
They
incredible.
Phenomenal.
Like,
They
and
really
that was
are.
seamless.
Yeah.
There was not a single nurse that we felt for 1 second. They just treat us like every other regular
Right.
family. That's what it
Amazing.
felt like.
Mhm.
anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was for someone who works in a medical capacity in the medical field. I felt very supported and empowered, not only as women in the same-sex couple, but we could have went to any one of those people in our medical team and said whatever we were feeling,
Right.
whether it
Yeah.
was positive or
Right.
negative,
Right.
and get
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
that we wanted.
That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
amazing.
That's amazing.
There was a
It's nice to
few
hear.
little bumps. Like sometimes I don't know. Sometimes maybe this is me also being a good little Cape Bretner and kind of like
Haley.
making excuses.
Haley
Sometimes, but
sipping her
sometimes I
wine.
do, yeah. Because sometimes, like I'll say, well, that person's from like a different cultural experience from than
Right.
us, and they have
Right.
different feelings
Right.
on this kind of, and I try and have that open perspective. I probably a bit more of me should be like, fuck that,
Right.
like
Yeah.
get on board or
Take
get
some
out.
self-responsibility.
Like
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we did have, we won't say any
No.
names, but we did have like when I was getting ready to get the epidural. Oh, so I guess Gray came.
Yeah, we
along
didn't even talk about the yeah.
Yeah.
And
Gray
that.
came
We'll
up-
end it
The
with that.
baby
Yeah.
came.
Okay, so we'll hold
Yeah.
that off. But I was getting the epidural, and
First of all, we were buddy we every single person.
oh
on the
yeah, we
unit.
had a
As
great
you would
we had a
be.
great
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
We totally had a great
Very open,
experience.
inviting people.
And so we were very open with our medical team, saying like what we want. We were very flexible. We were very accommodating.
Yeah.
Heather was fabulous. About to give birth to another human. All of those things.
Yes.
Like she
We were
was
waiting throughout the whole day, and the nurse that was so
lovely.
awesome.
Everything
And
was lovely.
we were
Yeah, the staff in those
Yeah.
units, aren't they just like meant to be in those
Well, it's their
units?
calling.
It's their
They're
calling
meant to be there.
100%.
Yeah.
They're meant to be there. I feel I'm on the palliative care board, and I feel the
Oh,
same way about
wow.
those people,
Yeah.
the nurses at palliative care. Like they are doing
Incredible.
like their calling.
Yeah.
They're doing what
Mhm.
they're meant to be
Yeah.
doing. They are incredible. So so I was getting the epidural, and the doctor came in, the anesthesiologist, and I was in the bathroom and he asked, I could hear him overhear Hayley asked who she was. And she said, oh, well, I'm her like wife, like whatever.
Who are you?
And yeah, he was very abrupt with it and asked. And then I came out of the bathroom and he said to me, your friend needs to wait outside.
Oh my.
Right. Which the waiting outside part, I guess, is
That's standard.
It is protocol.
Yeah. But the friend part, after she had literally just told him.
How
Yeah.
minimizing.
Wow.
That's so arrogant.
All I'm thinking is Heather's coming out of the bathroom, and if I freak out right now,
Right.
Yeah.
she's
This
about to
isn't gonna
have the
go
baby
well,
on the
like,
floor.
Right. Right.
Like the baby's gonna come out stressed. This is not the environment
Right.
that we need the baby to come out in.
Yeah.
We need
And
to
the
just
nurse was
get him
amazing.
there.
When Hayley waited outside, she held my hand. And then
Yeah.
people like that before were like, you give me what I need out of it, and I don't need to take
Right.
emotionally the other stuff.
Right.
And give him a little credit back. I'll give him a point in his favor.
Oh, yes.
That when we went into the operating room because we had to do an emergency C-section because Gray's heart rate started to decrease.
like not an
or
emergency in the sense.
tachycardia.
Yeah, it wasn't
So
quite at
It was
emergency.
just it wasn't emergency to the point where I wasn't allowed to attend
Right.
the actual surgery. So we were still in that threshold of like, it's safe for me to attend, it's safe for Heather for me to attend,
Right.
and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, is this going well?
He was on
like,
this side of the curtain
you
with
need
Hayley.
to tell me.
Right.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I am not looking over that
Right.
curtain. Like very forthcoming.
And he was
saying,
like, she's
yeah,
okay,
she's fine.
and she's going well.
Yeah.
So he redeemed
Yeah.
himself a little bit. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
And
I gave him a hug at the end of it.
it ended up
Yeah.
Like
it ended up working
Yeah.
itself out.
To your point, like of saying, you just sometimes you're like, okay, I just need what I need from you in this situation. I'll like cut the emotional tie and we'll get through this and we'll pretend that didn't happen, which I
Right.
understand. Like sometimes you just
Yes.
do that. My battle all the time internally, and maybe you can speak to your experience with this, is when do you do that and when do you not? Because is it a teaching moment?
I do it enough for her.
Yeah, but like, is
that-
every moment like, is there a way that we can get comfortable being uncomfortable as humans enough to
Right.
say,
Well,
hey,
that's-
I'm not trying to like, I don't want to be mad that you just said that. And I'm not trying to make you feel small or whatever, or make you
Right.
feel awkward or
Mhm.
embarrassed, but I
you
just need to,
I need to stand
I want to
up.
I want to stand up and say, she just told you she's my wife. Just use the word
Yeah.
wife because language is so important.
Right.
Don't say friend. I know it's uncomfortable for
Yeah.
you, but just try it so that
And
the next
I-
couple you see, you won't say friend, maybe. I don't know. Like
Right.
what?
And it's so interesting that you asked that question because that's what I do in my office with my clients
Right.
every single day.
Wow.
But when I'm out in the world,
Right.
it's very scenario dependent. I will say that I tend to, and I bet you guys will likely feel the same. If it's about me, I tend to play it off a little
Yes.
more. I don't really need to do that.
Yes.
But if they do something towards Hayley now, I'm not going to be quiet
Right.
anymore
Right.
because I can't
Right.
be quiet.
Yes.
Because
Right.
it's all of us being silent and
Right.
having people of color have to stand up for themselves, only themselves all the
Right.
time. That
Right.
the system will never
Exactly.
change.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
never,
And
I'm
we
not comfortable with
even-
that. anymore.
Exactly.
We even had a conversation before going into the hospital, before all of this, and Heather came to me and was like, look, I want to take responsibility for talking to the physicians about we are having a child of color,
Right.
and I as a white mother of a child of color need to stand up for our son and say, like, you need to be cognizant of the fact of
Right.
this is what is happening, and if you can't acknowledge that, then we
Mhm.
need to find
And
someone
Right.
I
else.
will
Like,
say,
Yeah.
I'm generally comfortable having difficult conversations. I practiced that in my head 50 times before I was able to say it in the hospital.
Wow.
Like I edited it like over and over again.
Mhm.
And it was constantly like, I don't want to make her feel bad,
Yeah.
but I also, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it was that constant back and forth of like, how do I say it in a way that's gentle enough,
Right.
but I still have to say it. And
Yeah.
and it felt really good afterwards,
Yeah.
but it was uncomfortable. I'm embarrassed to admit that it's
but
uncomfortable,
that's-
but I still have
But we
do
have
it.
to get uncomfortable to
Yeah,
get
that's
right.
comfortable.
You
And I
have
think
to
And I
that's
had
the
to play
biggest thing.
basketball.
Yeah.
Yes,
We have to check
exactly.
our privilege constantly.
Be
And I
uncomfortable.
mean, I'm learning that more than ever
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah.
That just,
Yeah.
wow.
And that's
and as someone who feels uncomfortable a lot,
Yeah.
like I appreciate that you guys are willing to
Mhm.
be uncomfortable because that is where I am
Right.
most of the time of
Right.
navigating. Is this a situation where I flip out,
Right.
or do I shove it back
Right.
down
Right.
and
Right.
keep going
Right.
as if nothing
Right.
was an issue.
And
So like,
yeah.
I appreciate that
Yeah.
you're willing to step
Right.
out and say like, this is unacceptable.
This is not
Yes.
okay.
And
Because a
yeah.
lot of the things
I
are
say this to my
unacceptable.
husband all the time that I'm like, if you feel uncomfortable or a situation makes you uncomfortable or annoyed or frustrated, that's your privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Thinking something's
What-
not a problem because it's not a problem for
Yes. Exactly.
Like, imagine being the person on the other side. Like, if you have to think, like, well, why does that bother you? Why does that annoy you?
you. There it is right there.
That's
There-
like, do you know what I
and-
mean? Like,
Absolutely.
Well, let's take it back then to the system. So that was one experience in the hospital
That
that
was
you
one.
had, and there
then
was
we had
another one. Yeah.
Yes. Where one of the hospital staff, not a medical staff,
Right.
came in to help us with some of those extra paperwork and things like that. She came in the room and I was in the bed, and Haley was holding Gray, and the woman kept saying, "Where's the father?" And I said, there is no father. That's his other mother. And she was like, but where's the father? Like, she was trying to figure out why there was not a man there to sign the birth certificate. I'm like, this is his other mother. She will be signing the birth certificate. Like, she just was not computing it.
Right.
And even when she left, you could tell that she was like, wait, what?
Right.
Like, I have no idea. She could tell she had no idea what just happened. Like, but we can't be the first lesbians.
looks like we have to get SMR at the
Yeah, I
hospital.
was just
Yeah.
gonna say, like, where is the train?
I think
But
so,
where
yeah.
is like the
Where's the training?
But-
or the updated?
Also, like, okay, she's old or whatever, but if you're an employee of whether it's the
Yes,
Nova Scotia
no,
Health
I
Authority,
agree with you.
the
We
Cape
totally
Repertory
agree,
Regional
yeah.
Center for Education, like, whether you're
I also think that the way we have the conversations has to not necessarily not hold people accountable, but be not gentle, but maybe like enough openness that we don't judge and shame
Well-
people. Because what happens is that goes underground,
Yeah,
and
Mhm,
then
mhm.
nobody asks
Right.
questions, and
you're
nobody
scared
Right.
to
knows
say
to
the wrong
learn.
thing.
And I have lots of older people
Yeah.
who are like ask me questions. Like, even my parents, like my mom asks
Yeah.
me questions all the time. I so appreciate her asking those questions.
I agree with you that they kind of, in the context of like, as a health authority, if you are going to take responsibility
Yes.
as a province,
Yes.
Training needs to be done.
Yes.
this is where you have an opportunity to step in. Like, I understand that this is a broken system, but that doesn't mean it's a broken system that constantly needs to let.
That can't be fixed. And-
Yes,
and it-
exactly.
There was a few points in this conversation that I was going to make this point, and this is one of them. Is like I forget the example you gave before, but it might not necessarily be the individual facing you, but I mean, we all know where we work, we're now a face and we're attached to those people. So if I ever
Right,
did something that
right.
made a headline, it would be like this position at this
See
institution.
you,
Yeah.
da,
Like,
da,
it wouldn't
da.
just be
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
right? You
yeah.
represent more than that.
Yeah,
But two
it's true.
is we can't necessarily, like you said, Heather, it needs to be a gentle conversation, and it always comes back to me for education. Like, we need to give our people the right tools, the right training, the right education. It's like a collective as a
better
society,
system.
and the
Yeah.
system, we can educate ourselves, like take some self-responsibility for sure.
Yes.
But you need to give people the right tools to be able to say, like,
I agree. I
like
agree.
the
totally
right
agree with
language,
that.
right? The right tools. Like, okay, I'll be honest,
yeah.
I'm uncomfortable creating those safe spaces. I'm uncomfortable.
Right.
I don't know enough about X, Y, or Z. I want to learn more,
Right.
but I'm scared to ask
And-
because if I don't know it now, does that make me a bigot, or does that make
A
me
bigot,
whatever?
or do I look
right?
stupid? And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
those are the people I'm actually talking
Yeah.
about. Because you learn very quickly the people who just don't know
No.
and
Right.
and kind of want to and are willing to do
Right,
something different,
right.
and the people who know
D-
and absolutely
Exactly.
right. Like,
choose
that
not to
conversation
do
could have went
that.
two
That I
different
don't need to be
ways.
gentle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
She
she
could have
wasn't.
said-
She wasn't getting it, and Heather gave her a look like, if you don't walk out of this
Right.
room
That's the
Right.
right
Right.
now, then we're gonna
Right.
go escalate the situation
Right.
into a deeper conversation.
Right.
Yes.
It just proceeded how it was, and we moved forward, and everything was fine,
Yeah.
and we got the birth certificate, and blah blah blah. But like,
And part of my personality is wanting to be that peacekeeper.
Of course.
and
Yes.
ruffle
Yes.
feathers, but sometimes that needs to go out the
Right.
window. And I'm getting much
Right.
better at
Right.
that. Like, I am
Yeah.
getting better
Yeah.
because people pleasing, to a certain point, as you get older, I think in
Yeah.
general too, you get more confident,
Yeah.
like not doing
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Sawyer and Sunny Boutique is a warm and inviting space to celebrate life's new beginnings. Offering high-quality maternity, baby, and postpartum products, it is more than just a store, it is an experience. Located on Charlotte Street in Sydney, Sawyer and Sunny features a baby change room, feeding corner, and strives to be a family-friendly place where visitors can feel at home while they shop. Guests feel good knowing that all of the products they are presented with are responsibly sourced and ethically created with the finest quality. Shopping for a gift? They've got tons of ideas for you. Find them on Instagram and Facebook to learn more.
I find myself
Exactly,
being more
yeah.
confident in motherhood. Has that been any of your experiences?
Yes,
Yeah, like all of a
absolutely.
sudden I'm
Yeah.
like, fuck the bullshit. Like
Yeah,
you don't have energy or
100%.
time,
None
and you
of that
realize what's important.
matters.
You're
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
is this self-serving? Is this serving? Who's this serving?
Exactly.
You know, like
And I think you said it right on. Like the resources of energy and time are finite, and you only have a certain
That's
amount
right.
to go around, and you're not going to waste it on some of the
Yeah.
bullshit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, the petty foolishness.
can I ask, the
absolutely.
birth certificate was that
Completely inclusive.
okay?
Yeah,
It was
It just said
Parents.
Yeah.
How
Parents.
easy is
Yeah.
it, right, to say
Mm,
parent,
easy.
guardian?
It's so
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
That was great.
That was a flawless system. Kudos to the government of Canada, because in America that is not an option.
Really?
No, you have to adopt.
You have to adopt
One
a
parent
child.
gets on it, and the other parent has to adopt. Yeah.
Wow.
What?
You have to adopt your own child. Okay.
Yeah. It's
Even
it's
in this,
very-
in a
there's
reciprocal
probably some
IVF,
provinces in Canada that probably still do that too. I'm not sure if it's
even
not
though it's
all.
Haley's egg in your womb, which one would have had to adopt? Like,
Well,
If you did a
that
genetic
makes it a little
test,
different,
it
but
potentially could be
I
both
don't know
of
what
us.
they
Right.
would do in that case. Yeah, I'm not sure.
wow, that is mind blowing to
so
me.
there are
Wow, I
lots
have
of,
so
like,
much to
weird
learn.
little-
So
yeah.
much to learn.
You don't learn until you come across
Right.
it.
Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we know about your whole experience, this system, the
Well,
process?
I wish the government of Canada would step up and facilitate a more equitable opportunity for people who want to have children, whether they are individuals wanting to have
Right.
children, whether
Mhm.
they're same-sex couples, whether they are unique situations. That should be an opportunity available to everyone. And I know that's even privileged to say even here in Canada, because it's not an option in
Right.
majority of
Many
any
countries,
other
yeah.
countries. Homosexuality is still illegal in a lot of places. So like, I know that
That
is
option is never an
a
option for some
extreme
people.
Mhm.
privilege to even say that. I really hope that from a financial perspective, especially, that
And
it
people have
becomes-
children from all financial
Right.
backgrounds and do very well.
Right.
It doesn't, because you can't pay this excessive amount of money. Like some people have the argument, well, then you shouldn't be having kids
No.
anyway. Well, that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
No,
that's-
that's
absolutely
irrelevant.
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have an extra $20,000 sitting around.
Yeah.
And all in, it probably came to something about
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
with everything said and done,
Yeah.
medication, multiple attempts,
And
like
and
travel.
like Jessica said too, like being a woman is the privilege
Yeah.
as well, because if we were two
yeah, like if
guys,
Right.
we wouldn't
then
have a
you need
uterus.
surrogate, you need an
Mhm.
egg.
Wow.
And my sister did surrogacy in the States with her then husband at the time, and her egg and all of that stuff. And it cost them over $100,000
Wow.
in the United States.
Wow.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
So and like many of the, or at least the few couples that we know have adopted,
Right.
the
Yeah.
like two men,
Yeah.
you know, and that's wonderful. But like it's a privilege to
Yeah.
want to have your
Right.
own biological
Right.
baby for that.
Right.
matter, like
Yeah,
in
it really
this
is.
situation and stuff like that.
Wow, it's
But it's a
incredible.
lot easier for us to get sperm than it is to go the other direction, right? So
And we can't even donate our eggs to another
like the
embryos. We can't even donate them.
You
We
can
can
only
either
donate
donate
them
to
to
science
science.
or
Like,
destroy them.
Why?
and that's another
Why?
thing it's
'Cause-
another thing that comes up a lot for like couples. So we have 10 embryos.
What do we do? with
We
them?
want 2
Right.
kids.
Right.
We say we have 8 left. Like I have friends that are done having kids, but they're still paying to keep them frozen because like these are your embryos.
Right,
Like, do you
yeah, like,
let them
that's
go?
Why can't you
Like,
donate them?
Wow.
No, only to
To
science.
science.
What
You
is the
can't, like, give them
reasoning
to another
behind
Why,
that?
though?
Is there
I think it's something
I
to
think
do
it's
with like legal stuff,
something
as far as
or
I
other.
understand. Not being able to donate them to a family.
A
in need.
family,
In America,
yeah.
they can. It's a Nova Scotia thing. I don't know all the ins and outs of
Right.
it, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. But
yeah.
But like if we had the opportunity and we had our whatever family that we wanted and we were done and we had excess left over,
Yeah.
like
And that would be a very personal choice too, because you're
It's a
donating
full
a full
sibling.
siblings to someone.
Oh, wow.
so it's
That's
like,
right.
There's lots of ins
There
and outs of things you
is.
don't think about until you have to think about.
Right,
it.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there, like, there's sperm banks, sperm donors? Is there egg banks, egg
Yes.
donors? Okay,
Yep.
but just not the not the
You
fertilized
can get a lot
embryo.
more money for the eggs.
You can
Not
or
the
you can't,
fertilized.
Heather?
Yeah. Oh, you
That
can.
was gonna be my next question. Was like, can we?
Well, look what Hayley had to get there to get the eggs out.
Right,
So it's much more energy intensive. Like,
That's right.
Yeah.
We want to get to the finale of this whole process, the
Right,
amazing ending that it resulted in for the both of
Yes.
you. So you already said it. You
Yeah.
went through the process. Bring us through the 4th trimester. Here we are.
so Friday the 13th.
Oh, lucky 13.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So the Thursday, the day before, I did the cervidil. So another part about IVF is they will not let you go over 40
Okay.
weeks. And I asked for the scientific reasoning behind that because I was wanting to know. And I took, shout out to Sarah Landry, I took her childbirth education
yes.
class, and
Always ask why.
felt
She's
empowered.
amazing.
I
Yes.
felt empowered to ask why.
Amazing.
And what else are our options? And so I asked this the whole way around. I said, like, they said they don't know, but there's some research suggests that the placenta stops working around 40
Yeah.
weeks. I said, is that because people who do IVF inherently have generally fertility issues, or is it inherent in the IVF process? And nobody could answer that question.
Interesting.
Right. But so at 39 weeks, I went in and they did the cervidil, and that like string thing fell out, and like the whole thing, like it didn't work. And then Dr. McMullen.
I was in there like, let's breast pump you. Put the book let's get it going.
So, because like, and I had like, I was worried, you do, so then maybe the chance of C-section goes up or whatever, and all that stuff.
Right.
So, but he was like dug in. He wasn't coming like on his own. So Dr. McMullen came in the next morning and tried the balloon where they mechanically induce you. And she tried a couple times, it didn't work. She's like, I'm going to try one more time. And then that time it worked.
Wow.
So I got admitted right away, and they did the Pitocin.
Maxed out, max dose
that out.
Pitocin.
I got to 4
12
centimeters and stayed at 4 centimeters for like 12 or 13 hours.
Oh
wow.
my God.
Bless you.
So then Dr. Critchley she was amazing. Oh my God. She was there at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. She like wasn't even
She's
on
incredible.
call. She was in recovery with me afterwards. She came by the next morning. Like, she was just amazing. And she came in and said, like, his heart rate starting to, get a little tacky, and I think we got to go. And so we talked it out, and then we went, and
we rolled out at 11:25. Heather got into surgery at 11:30. I get brought into surgery at 11:35. Carol comes out and she's like, I'm scrubbing up. Just want to give you a heads up. There's gonna be a lot of people in there, and it's like, okay, da 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 da. Walk in there. There's like 15.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We were like, there's a lot of people in here. Heather's basically like Jesus pose.
Like they had strapped down and everything. And then they don't say anything. They're so professional. Like, I guess like whatever's going on behind that curtain, you don't hear anything. The first thing we heard was Dr. Critchley saying like, oh, full head of hair.
Wow. And he does have a full head of hair.
We already knew he was a boy at that point. So like, they told us he had an anatomically correct penis for like weeks and weeks.
And we also knew he had a full head of hair because it showed up on the
Wow,
ultrasound.
isn't that wild? You see it like flow into the fluid.
Yeah. So and
then we don't hear anything for about 6 minutes, and nothing's going on. I asked the anesthesiologist, is everything okay? Because I'm seeing all the output that's going on and everything that's happening. Heather's like,
and you would be aware of some of that, Haley, where some people wouldn't be cognizant of that.
Totally cognizant of everything that's going on. And I'm like, just don't look over the curtain. Don't look over the curtain. Don't look over the curtain. And then all of a sudden, he's like, she's fine. Heather was fine. And then Carol says he's here. And then Dr. Kellogg does her assessment. And then our adorable nurse brings him around, and she's like, he's here. Like, here, like, there's the baby. And we were like, okay, like
Yeah.
he's here. And
She took pictures.
she took pictures for us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he came out at 11:05. So
Or like
we
40 something.
we
Yeah.
were
It
only
was
there for
fast.
like 25
Wow.
minutes in
Wow.
total. And then Heather looks at me with a death stare and says, "You go with the baby."
Well, they took
Oh.
I said, good. And she's
Yeah.
like, do you want me to
So-
stay? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
go. And then we got wheeled to recovery. It took forever to like unthaw or whatever we're calling that, or thaw.
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's what it felt like. Oh God. And then we got to the room, and the next morning the pediatrician came in, and she was like, unbeknownst to us or me at all, she said, that was rough. That was a really rough one. And I was like, what do you mean?
What?
She's like, he got stuck and they had to vacuum him out.
Even after the surgery. So
Oh,
he had shoulder
wow.
dystocia and was stuck underneath her pelvic bone. So they had to
Wow.
vacuum him
And
out.
Dr. Richard said he never would have come out
Right.
naturally. His shoulders were like too wide
Right.
and stuff. So, but she went in to check on him because she thought his arm and his shoulder were going to be damaged, but he was totally
Wow.
fine. And yeah, and his name is Gray, Ricker Rutterham.
Right.
Beautiful.
Oh my God, what a beautiful
He's
name.
6
Isn't that
months now, and
beautiful?
we are totally in love.
6
I
months.
Yes.
bet.
Unreal.
Unreal.
Yeah. 27
Unbelievable.
inches and 18 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, he's
Wow.
really
So
fast.
athlete in
Sounds
the
so big.
making.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's awesome.
Can you tell us, is there anything that surprised you the most about the 4th trimester? Like since he's been here, do you feel like you both settled
Well,
into your roles? You have
yeah.
different roles. Do you feel
Well,
like you have
I
strengths
feel
and
like-
weaknesses? Like what does that look like to you?
Yes.
I
Go
feel
ahead.
like as being in a same-sex relationship, we already kind of like had our kind of roles figured out, but like we actually had to have the discussion of like
Right.
who does what in terms of responsibility, because it's not like, okay, the man does all of this stuff
Like
and the woman
Sarah,
Right.
takes
you will
care of the
appreciate
kids
this.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like
Right.
we had to discuss like,
You don't fall into
Right.
genitals, which
Even-
most couples tend to, whether they
Right.
mean to or
Right.
not.
Totally.
Most hetero
Totally.
couples, they do fall into that.
Condition that way.
And there's some studies that say like some LGBT relationships, when you get to a certain point, they last longer because of that. Because there is no, hey, I'm the woman, I'll do the
Right.
dishes, and you're the man, you take out the garbage. It's like,
Wow.
well, I hate doing the dishes. Well, I don't mind taking out the
Right.
garbage. So there's a
Right.
you actually have to have a conversation about
Right.
it. And not and it just tends to fall in the background of couples who are
Because
opposite
you're not
sex. And not
following the
even
norm or
purposely.
going against the norm, right? Like
Right.
where in
Which is just
heterosexual
falling
couples
into
it
the
would be, you have
roles
to
of-
explain it. Like I know you expect me to do
Right.
this, but I don't, or whatever.
Right.
Right.
Or like the guy asking who drives.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God.
I was so perplexed. I was like, whoever feels
Yeah.
like I didn't know where he
Or-
was going
right.
with it. Like
Or-
it took me a second.
right.
Like
or even when the nurse was like, well, are you going to take prolactin so you can feed the baby?
like
It's
they
like,
asked Haley that. I
oh,
was
no,
like,
no,
we didn't
no,
know
no,
that
no,
was
no,
an issue.
no.
Wait,
That's
wait,
her
wait.
job.
Haley could have
that's-
breastfed if she took medication.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, we didn't
So
know.
I
until
could have
we
taken
gave birth, too.
prolactin several weeks before the baby got here, and I could be breastfeeding
She could be
him.
breastfeeding. Yeah.
What?
And I was like, no.
Which kind of
Can Patrick take that?
I know, right? Now that Sarah, the one thing that surprised me the most was I thought pregnancy was going to be awful.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to hate every minute
Yeah.
of it, and then I was finally going to have the baby. It was fine. My pregnancy was awesome.
Right.
Dream.
Like I hate to say this because I know some people suffered, but I didn't get sick
Right.
once. Like I had a
Mm.
great experience. I feel like I'm paying now
Yes.
because my body feels like it's falling
Wow.
apart because of, and I don't know if it's the breastfeeding or the hormones or whatever, but
All
like,
of it.
it's
Mm.
like every joint in my
Yeah.
body hurts. Like it's
Yeah.
this kind of this weird thing. But I'll say the most surprising thing was how hard breastfeeding
Yeah.
was.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm 100% fed as
Yeah.
best. I wanted to
Yeah.
do that, to give it a try for myself. And
Yeah.
God, the first 2 months were so
Yeah.
hard.
So hard.
They make it
It's
look so
so
easy or
demanding.
sound so
It's
easy.
They
so
make
hard.
it seem like they pass you a baby and that baby beautifully
Right.
latches and you have this incredible
And Gray was
experience.
tongue-tied.
Or they
Gray
scream
couldn't.
for hours.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's what they don't tell
And
you.
don't
Like the baby
eat.
basically
It's
starves
like-
for the first 2 days till the milk
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
in and like all this other
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
so
And Gray had a tongue tie and
Anyway,
you didn't
that
know,
was-
right? You thought it was supposed to hurt,
Right.
right?
which shout out to Dr. Jen
Dr. Jen
Marr.
Marr.
We took him to a chiropractic appointment and she's the one who said this looks like, because nobody asked me. Everyone asked me, is he gaining weight?
Right.
Is he gaining weight? Yeah, he's gaining weight. He's doing amazing. He's gaining
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
weight. Nobody asked me if it hurt.
Right.
So she asked, when she asked, does it hurt? I said, it hurts so much. She's like, it's not
That's
supposed to
supposed
hurt.
to
I'm like,
hurt.
how am I supposed to know? It
Yes,
seems like it's supposed
Right.
to hurt.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
Shout out to Dr. Williams. hooked us up with a
Did the
little
tongue
clip.
tie.
Heather cried more than anybody
You
in the
guys should have
room.
seen
Of course.
Like,
we took him to get the tongue clipped, and I stood in the corner like crying. They had like residents there, and she popped her head. You okay over there,
Yeah.
Mom? like great and
No.
cried.
Yeah.
He cried for like 4
Like,
seconds.
stop
and
it, Mom.
didn't
You're
even
embarrassing
care.
me.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. And like there was hardly any blood. And like they gave him just a little bit of concentrated sugar. That was like his drug.
And he was
to,
like,
loop
rolling
Yeah.
his eyes in the
Yeah.
back. Like, it was crazy.
The nurse was like, you okay over there, Ma? And instantly it didn't hurt. And, like,
Wow.
I couldn't believe
Wow.
it.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
So, yeah.
Crazy.
So
Yeah, it's not.
How is it going now? Like, has the dust settled?
yeah. Oh, everything's great.
Yeah.
Like right now, my struggle is, and I actually I'm working with Caitlin Reed. She's doing lactation consulting.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Yeah. So basically you find out like weird things about yourself. Like my nipples pointed out.
Yes.
I didn't know
No.
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
I'm only doing the football hold, which is great. It works for us, but it keeps me from doing it in public because
Right.
it's an awkward hold to do out in the
Right.
world. You can't
Yeah.
really do it.
Yeah.
So, and had the shield going and the whole thing. And then, so I was finding myself stressed pumping bottles to take out in public because I thought it would be like modesty. Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to wave my boob out,
Right.
but I actually don't care about
Right.
that part, surprisingly. Like it was this other thing. So anyway, I had a great first consult with her, and I definitely highly recommend if you're having any issues, because you think
Awesome.
even 6 months in, like now I get to learn this other part of
Right.
it so that I can
Right.
feel comfortable
Right.
doing a cradle
That's
hold or
awesome.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, but that for me definitely was.
And
the
girl,
hardest
it
part. And
takes 9
obviously
months to
being
grow a baby, so at
exhausted.
least give yourself that
Yeah.
much grace. Like you're 6 months
Yeah.
postpartum,
Mhm.
your body is still working its way
Yeah,
down from that
yeah.
adventure,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And I got lucky because like I was instantly mobile after my C-section.
Wow.
Like I had
Yeah.
no, like you'd almost like you think it didn't happen. I was instantly mobile. And this is
Yep.
not a knock to any guy out there, because there's so many great dads out there doing their thing and they're amazing. And hopefully you guys, I know Sarah, you
Mhm.
do. I don't know your husband.
Yeah. Yeah. We have
Jessica,
2
but,
of
like,
them for sure.
Hopefully you guys
he
have
makes the
wonderful.
pass. I'll
Yeah,
pass
as
him.
long as you. But I mean, there's a major benefit to having 2 women. do
Yeah,
this thing.
well,
We-
we're so
We wanted to ask that question.
Oh,
like, what does
it's
this
like
4th
night and
trimester
day.
look like for you?
It's-
Because
Imagine
Okay.
having 2 bombs.
Is there still
Oh.
is there some roles that you're like, well, I delivered like, does it come at
No,
all, or
it
is
just,
it just
like,
2 women?
it was so easy for me to just pump a little extra, and like I got to sleep
Yeah.
because Hayley could do the
Mm.
morning feeding, and
Yeah.
like I
What a
just
team.
trusted that she was going to do it exactly the way I would do it. if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
And there's something innate about that, and not to gender it, because
No,
like I
but-
said, I know lots of amazing dads,
Yes.
but there is something
A nature
there
nurture
that-
thing. Yeah.
right. Exactly. So that makes that's a huge benefit of like of being.
And we
there's lots of
wondered that. Like
benefits,
Jessica and I were
yeah.
chatting before. We were like, I wonder if does it ever come down to where like both of you know what you're doing so well, or you want to take so much control that or you just trust you're equal.
I feel that about his fashion.
Okay.
I step aside and let Hayley
Yeah,
dress her, and
fair.
then sometimes I veto things
Yeah.
because I'm like, I'm not taking him out in that. So take us
Yeah.
out. Like, but mostly she's very amazing at it. But
Mhm.
no, there's not too many things where like if she's out for them the day, I don't worry
Yeah.
that he's not wearing the right clothes
Right.
or that he's not like
Right.
you know like have enough food
Yeah.
or any of that stuff. And like I said, lots of dads do that good too. But there was no like power trip. And we tried we worked hard at our relationship communication in
Yeah.
general before
Mhm.
he came.
Yeah.
So like that got worked out over many years so that we have open
Right.
conversations
Right.
about it.
So key.
And we talk about things beforehand. Like we talk like right now, since we did sleep training, he gets up anytime he gets up after 6, we get up
Right.
like
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, and I get up one day and she gets up the next day, and we pre-plan that out, or I take Saturday mornings to sleep and she sleeps in Sunday
Right.
morning. So there's
Yeah.
no like in the bed at 6 a.m. being pissed off, being like, are you getting
Right.
him? Are you getting him? Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
we've learned to have certain conversations beforehand, and it takes
Yeah.
that sting out of
Yeah.
things. Like,
Definitely.
and there might be a day where it's my day and I'm exhausted, and he was like, do you want me to go? And I'm like, yes. And that works out
Right.
great. But there's like, if you know what you're doing, there's not that like undercover,
Right.
like
Animosity.
resentment.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's helpful.
You said there was roles that you had to discuss once, like the 4th trimester, once you arrived. Is there like what did surprise you about the roles that each of you kind of took? Anything?
That's a good question.
I felt like I hated going back to work.
Yeah, that's so hard.
And like I trusted Heather with Gray with everything, but like I felt like I was like abandoning him and being like, but then at the same time, like, well, you still have to fulfill your roles as like a member of society and going to work,
and we got to pay the mortgage.
And
this 50%
I
pay
know
is for the birds.
Gosh,
and it's not even 50% because
there's a whole nother process we'll need to take down and investigate someday.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like right now, like our new struggles are like we're really checking our language, especially around things like, I don't know, like a lot of the books that we've been getting lately are like very dad centric. So I'm like,
I was telling you guys earlier, like there's this one amazing book, Mommy, Mama, and Me.
Yes.
And it's about this little baby with two moms, and you know, like it's very cute. We got like 6 copies of that for people because it's the only. So every person who bought us a book bought us that book, which we
are so proud of that gift too.
And like now we're like regifted and like here's one. Like here's a.
But representation matters. There shouldn't be only one book.
Exactly, and the key is if straight parents bought those books,
right,
and it wouldn't be an issue.
Then those books would be in demand, and they would get sold.
Exactly,
and so there is a responsibility on that side of things. Is like we're desperately looking for this one book that's available out of millions of books, and I'm sure there's more, but
not readily accessible.
If those books were in demand, like it doesn't have to be uncomfortable for, and it opens the conversation of wait a minute, this family has
normalizes
it, or 2 dads or whatever. Explain that to me.
The crazy part is that kids now are so receptive to anything that's non-traditional that like when you say we're 2 moms, they're like,
exactly.
Like, what are you even talking about? Why are we even talking about
it's a non-issue, non-starter. Yeah. Speaking of Mommy, Mama, and Me, can I ask, will you both call yourself?
That's a great. So here's the hard part about this question.
Okay.
We've struggled with it already.
Okay.
Because so some couples go like Mama and then their name, like Mama Heather, Mama, like, and that works for them. That's not what we want to do. Like that's not like and for just personal preference. So there's nothing wrong with it.
And we can't do Mama H. We're both Mama.
Right. So we're thinking maybe someone will be Mama and someone will be Mom.
Right.
The other thing a lot of couples tell me is the kids end up picking for you, and like you find out.
Yeah.
And then other people have said like, well, why do you even need to differentiate? Like my mom, for example, asked that question, just very innocently, like, why would you need to differentiate? But it's not just about knowing the tone that the kid calls and who it's for.
I want to know who the daycare is calling.
The school needs to know who they're asking for.
Right.
Like the other people in their lives need to know what they're asking for. Like it even comes up at my mom and dad's house when they're home. They're like, "Oh, go see your mama," and like they're like, "Oh,
which one?
What do you guys like?" You know what I mean? So, and even when we're talking about ourselves, it's come up a few times when we're talking to him in sometimes you talk in the third person, like, "Oh, show mama how you walk," or like whatever.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we're both in the room and I'm like, do you want me to come over and watch him walk, or are you talking about yourself?
Right.
Like, so it's come up and we don't know how to navigate it. We actually searched for in like 100 different languages how mom is said, so maybe using a different language. But we never really found anything that.
So I throw everything at him. I'm like mom, mama, madre, mima, mima, blah, like all of the names.
But
and
like most people say like that. Like I read a blog of parents and they were like, he just ended up calling me Momo, and then I was Momo and I was Mom, and it just happened.
Cute,
so I guess we'll just see how it unfolds. We're not too stuck on it one way.
Right.
But then Sarah was like, Heather's sister was like, well, whoever gets Mama is going to be able to get the name said first. So I was like, well, I want Mama then. Like,
exactly. Mama.
Exactly.
That is funny. I think right now that it's inclusive of both of you until you can separate. But it is true because you do want them to be able to have that factor of like being able to differentiate between you,
of course,
for his environment and for your own.
Yeah.
So it is something that will be interesting to see how that unfolds.
It will.
And we're in another discussion right now. Like, I want to reach out to my friend. Like, she's a doctor of anthropology, and like, how do we talk about race with
Right.
Gray? Because he is a quarter Black.
Right.
And like, how do we bring that up and bring it up in a way that's like nurturing and supportive and facilitating positive relationships? Like, but I want that to be balanced so that he grows up with a sense of confidence and a sense of strength and empowerment, that he is like a safe individual.
I don't want him to grow up thinking that the world
is against him because of his color of his skin. But at the same time, I don't want to do him a disservice because it's clearly out here.
Right. And this has been one of the most difficult conversations that we have all the time. Right. And because I'm coming from a place of like, I don't want him to live in fear all the time. Right. And so if we don't, and Hayley said, if we don't talk to him, he won't have the tools to deal with it when it absolutely does come up, because it will come up.
Times are changing faster now, based solely even on technological advances in our in this space and time ever before.
Yeah.
It's arrogant to think that we shouldn't put all of our systems under a microscope and then and have those respond to the current times, right? Like, they've been broken for so long, or not, like we just said, not
so
broken.
Many things that 20 years ago were absolutely known scientific fact are completely different now. Like, and it's so funny too, because like, we didn't like, you don't know that you're the neighborhood lesbian couple until like, you know, like the funniest thing happened to me. I was at the Bay I remember it was like December 14th or something.
She like just had a baby
a week before Christmas. I had Gray a month earlier, and it was the very first time I left the house without him. I had like all these,
which is such an adventure on its own.
Oh my God. I was like, I'm going to the mall. Hayley got me a massage, and then I snuck to the mall to get her a few Christmas presents. So I was in the Bay, and I was talking to the lady at the desk, and she was helping me get a few things together. And then Hayley called on FaceTime while I was there. So I answered the phone, and then I showed the lady Gray, and I was like, and then so she hung up, and I said, that's my wife. And so she starts telling me the story about this couple that's in their neighborhood that just had a baby. And like, because as soon as people find out you're lesbian, they have like a lesbian story for you of people they know, which I actually think is endearing.
It's the same with twins.
I think it's lovely. Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh my gosh, my cousin's twins.
Yeah, and I'm appreciative that people want to connect and that they're whatever. So she's telling me this story. And she's finishing telling me the story about this couple that just had a baby. And she said, where do you live? And I said, Westmount. And she said, on Fairmount? I said, yeah. She's like, you're the one I'm talking about. We were the lesbian couple that she was talking about. She lived like down the street, and our neighbor next door, who's very lovely. They had a conversation about us and stuff like that. And then Hayley ran into the guy next door,
and he was like, "You're the lesbian, the Westmount lesbians.
I heard the lesbians had a baby."
Oh my God!
and he was like an older, gruff
dude. He was
dude,
sweet,
and I loved that he just threw that.
Yeah,
out
you're
there
the resident.
Like, it was actually awesome.
And
like,
now he comes and checks on us. And he's like, "How you guys doing? Do you need me to burn any boxes for you?" Like,
very interesting offer.
We have a lovely
classic
little
neighbor.
Yeah, we have a lovely little
that is sweet.
So that was quite I could tell like her heart was sinking as she realized I'm talking about you and I don't even know you. Like, so it's pretty good.
That is too funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I also want to like reiterate, like, there are so many different types of lesbian couples. There's so many different types of experiences. There's so many different types of relationships. Like, I feel so blessed that I'm in this journey with you. Like, this is amazing. But like, I know not everybody has it the same. So like,
and actually you made me think of just how the roles did change, because in our relationship, it just naturally works out that I tend to mow the lawn and do the more like quote unquote.
So now I have to do the garbage, and
then I got pregnant, and Hayley's like mowing the lawn and taking the garbage out, things that I actually enjoy doing. And she's like, fuck, I gotta get this stuff. Like, so it was like an open conversation of like, I can't 9 months pregnant be trucking around in the backyard.
No, exactly.
So like, so they kind of just did switch, which wouldn't normally happen. You know,
I'm like, can we switch back now? Like, are we ready to switch back?
Take
like,
these roles on again.
Those things?
That is so funny. Ladies, this has been such a fascinating conversation. Like I've learned so much. I think Jessica and I have just been like, just listening,
I've
hanging
just-
on to every word.
But Hayley will be carrying the next one if all things work out well.
Yeah,
So
it's exciting.
And then the question is one or two, because two
Right.
could mean 4.
Because one could mean
Stay
two.
well, that's
One could mean two.
two could mean two. One
Or
could mean two.
One could mean two.
or 2
Right.
could be 4.
But that's
yeah.
like the chances of that are pretty slim.
Hey,
but
girl,
it could happen. I
It
suppose.
got
can happen.
4 eggs.
Yeah.
It can happen.
We got a lot of really positive graded eggs.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm gonna wait too long because we don't have to wait for my body to recover. So
Oh
Right,
wow!
right.
Have you been
Yes,
Have you?
yeah.
You don't need to tell us specifics, but have you started that
yeah, we made
conversation?
an appointment with the clinic
Wow.
for November
Wow.
when he turns
Wow.
1, just to start the process
Yeah.
because it's a long process
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
way. And if it works out right away, and, if it
And they
doesn't-
they just skip the fallopian tubes. They just go right to the
Wow.
uterus.
Okay.
You don't even need to worry about
Incredible!
Yeah.
Wow, that is
Yeah,
amazing.
so lots
That's
of
exciting.
things ahead. Yeah.
But the weird part is we feel like we're so insufficient as new moms.
Yeah,
Like,
you know, there's
everything is
that
wrong. Mom guilt.
imposter syndrome
Yes.
that
Yeah.
lives
so
hard,
true.
So
Yeah.
so,
Oh.
So
true.
real.
Like,
Yeah.
and some days I'll be like, I got this, and then the next day
Yeah.
I'll kick you in the ass.
Yeah.
Like, no, you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
I always
Try
say it's
again.
important. It's important to remember that we're not robots. We're humans. Like we're meant to have emotions. We're meant to
Right.
have good days and bad days. And,
Right.
you know, it's I think a lot harder when you are a mom because you see on social media and you see someone else is having their good day, but that's on
Yeah.
your bad day. But then you
Right.
don't see their
So
bad
true.
days
Right.
because they don't post those bad days. So
It's
it
so
just
true.
it's like this.
Yeah.
Or you have someone who's
Constant-
hella f***ing grounded all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm like,
zen.
can you tell me how you really feel?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
And then I'm the one that's always like crying and like,
Yeah.
I need therapy. Like,
That's not true. And this parenting thing, like just as you get something figured out and there's a nice rhythm going,
Yeah.
bam, something
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
Like
For the
Yeah.
rest of our
So,
lives. I remember when Bo
forever.
turned 1. That was such a milestone for me. Like I remember thinking like, okay, Bo turned 1. Obviously we're going to celebrate that. But Pat, you and I deserve like a bottle of champagne. We made it to 1 year.
Right.
We survived the first year. We did
Yeah.
it. We're
Everyone's
feeling
alive.
good. Everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're all alive. Like, you know, and I remember saying to my mom, I just thought the first year was going to be the hardest. And once that first birthday hit, I thought like some
Yeah.
of the worry was going to trickle away.
right.
But then all of a sudden it just like compounded. I was like, wait, my host is so
Mhm.
dangerous and he has to go out into the world. And what if
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
and my mom,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember my mom so just calm and aloof always. Kathy's just so
Mm.
level headed. We're having lunch and she just laughs and she's like, Sarah, you're 31 years old. I worry about you every
I'm
single
still
day.
doing
Like
it.
you think
Yeah,
this is gonna
I
get
know.
Yeah.
easier? And I was like,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's the hardest part is the
Yeah.
constant
Gut
worry. Like
punch.
the
Yeah.
constant
Yeah.
worry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just like everything's scary.
Exactly.
Now. Like,
We end every episode with some would you rather questions. So we'll throw a few at you quickly, just rapid
Yes, love
fire,
it.
answer them as you will.
Okay.
We'll start with our classic ones and then we just throw a random one at you.
Yeah.
So Jessica, do you want to do the first one?
Sure. So what would you rather, tea or coffee?
coffee, black.
Espresso, especially.
Ooh.
Okay.
Wine.
Not black. Only psychopaths have black coffee. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what my nephew told me.
Patrick
He
and
goes, "You got
Hayley.
your coffee black? You're a crazy
Yeah.
person." I said, "Wow."
For wine, white or red?
Red.
I like anything red.
Here's kind of more spontaneous one. So would you rather be the smartest person alive or the funniest?
Funniest.
I would probably say smart.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a good
Yeah.
one too. I would say funniest.
That's a hard one. Heather, what?
When you think of really, really smart people, they have a hard time in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Because
why
that
I
would
would
be in
pick
the-
funniest.
Yeah.
At 100%. Too much pressure.
You have to be smart to be
That's
funny.
right. Quick wit it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
What advice do you have for your future self?
Future self.
Yeah.
Pick your battles.
Yeah. Don't sweat the
Mm,
small
Good.
stuff.
Don't sweat the
Yeah.
small
Usual.
stuff.
Yeah. How do you define success?
That's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find success because a lot of my siblings, like in the States, they're like, I'm like, I got healthcare, I got a house, we got a
right.
baby
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Like we're checking all those heteronormative boxes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're doing
So I would
Yeah.
say it used to be about what things looked like on the outside. Like very, and not that I've become enlightened all of a sudden or something like
Yeah.
that, but over time coming to the realization that that external stuff it doesn't change your level of happiness.
Yeah.
It has to start
Right.
from the inside.
Yes.
And so
Definitely.
success
Say it
isn't being
again.
necessarily happy all the time
Right.
either, but being more focused on the internal versus the
Right.
external. Because I've just
But
seen
I-
so
like
many
that.
stories of people who want to get the big house and the big car and the right job.
Yeah.
And they get to that point and they feel devastated because they're like, I did everything right and I'm still not
Right.
happy.
Exactly.
Right.
How
That's
devastating
huge.
would that be?
I 100% agree with that.
What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
That's a great question. Like for me, I guess the first thing that popped in my head for some reason is I wish I had known how hard the first couple months would have been.
Right.
I don't think it would have changed. Like, I don't know if you can prepare for it anyway,
Right.
like the first couple months of having a baby, but like it was hard.
Yeah.
Like it was
Mm.
exhaustingly hard.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and now we're in a rhythm and everything's normal. And that's what
Yeah.
everyone told me would happen.
Right.
But like, I just thought the pregnancy was the hard part and then you're all good. After
Right.
that,
Yeah.
you'll figure
And
it
it
out.
feels so far away. Like now, when you look at it, like, okay, 6 months, but when your baby's a month old and you say, oh, by the time 6 months comes, it's like,
Oh,
well, that's like
it's
5
a
more months, right?
Blink of an
Yeah.
eye, but yeah,
Right.
you're
It feels
right.
so long in the moment.
It
But
does.
yeah.
Yeah.
How do you manage a work-life balance?
Honestly, I'm getting much better at leaving work at work.
That's good.
Like
So
I've come
hard.
to a place where
Shouldn't even look at her
confidence,
work
where I say,
Yeah. That's important.
I let people know ahead of time, hey, I check my phone from 9 to 5 every day. If you leave me a
Yeah.
message after that, I'm going to get back to you the next day. I just don't want you
Right.
to think I'm ignoring
Set the
you,
expectation.
but I manage those expectations
Yeah.
ahead of time. And
Boundaries
that
are
has
key.
been
Yeah.
hugely helpful.
Your boundaries are better than mine. Mine are a little
Mm.
Flimsy.
Flimsy, floozy.
Floozy. her expectations, her boundaries are really, really slight.
I would say that it was definitely hard going back to work, especially coming from a perspective of like, well, I put my time in at work, like I should have the time off, like kind of thing. I don't know why there isn't like equitable. Both parents should have
Right.
the time off. Why does
Right.
the male get shorter amount of time
Or the other parent.
or the other
longer than
parent? But at the same time, like seeing what Heather has had to go through in terms of like basically relearning her body and kind of feeding another human being and being responsible for all of those things, like I'm in awe of kind of what she's done.
What is a lesson you've learned over the last year living in a pandemic?
Oh God, don't take people for granted.
Yeah. Good
Mm.
one.
Don't take relationships for granted. Do them now. When the restrictions opened up, it's like I need to go see everyone
Yeah.
now. Like,
Yeah.
even more so now that I have Gray.
Yeah.
Like, I used to like kind of like not avoid, but like
You can say avoid. we
avoid's not the
avoid.
right word, but you just
Yeah.
but just like not
Tend
place
to-
importance on visiting my aunts.
Right,
or
right,
visiting,
yeah,
like, you know what I
yes.
mean? There was always time.
Yeah.
It was always
Yes.
Right.
that'll happen at the next Christmas party.
Right.
Yes.
That
that'll happen.
urgency wasn't there.
And now, especially with Gray, I want to show them off so
Yeah.
bad. Like, so when things open up, I like just don't take people for granted.
Yeah, it's a great
That-
one.
yeah.
Do the things you want to
absolutely.
do now because
Yeah.
the world's crazy.
Yeah.
I would say like getting used to the fact that there's no consistency
Mhm.
and that there's no this is the guideline and we're going to stick by the guideline. It's an
Yeah.
ever moving target
Right.
of like we're going to adjust and evolve as the pandemic
Right.
evolves, and that means not seeing your family and not doing the things that you normally do to facilitate like positive relationships or like even just like baby classes.
Yeah.
Like Gray's
Yeah,
not
like when all those
experiencing
things
any
stopped,
of
Right.
those
I
things.
was
Like,
like, wow, I have to fill all day, every
Mm.
day with like activities and
Yeah.
making sure I'm stimulating him. And
Right.
all those things
Yeah, that
need to
pressure.
be done. That like baby yoga class did that for one day.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
half a day.
That's
Yes.
Right.
Like stuff.
All
like
of a
that,
sudden
so-
you're expected to be
Yeah.
all these different roles like at
right.
once, right?
And by 4:30, when Haley gets home from work,
Yeah.
I'm like, here you go.
Yes.
Here's a baby.
Yes.
Yes.
And I feel for
Yes.
her because she just worked all day and then she's
Yeah.
home and she can't wait to see him and spend time.
Yeah.
But it's still one work to
Yes.
the next work to
It-
bed.
yes.
And then,
Right.
you know,
I feel
like,
that so much.
So this is our last one.
Okay.
Just finish this sentence. I wonder.
I wonder one day when the world is actually like an equitable place.
Wonder what that'll be like.
What will that be like
Yeah.
when things aren't ingrained to societal norms, when things aren't this way or that way, or even from a racial perspective, from a sexual identity perspective, to like, when will all of this labeling kind of benefit those who don't need the labels, or where the labels are no longer necessary, where we're all just individuals trying to kind of create like a world without the negativity that goes with that.
Yeah.
And when will we get there?
The first thing that came to my mind is just like, I wonder what the world would look like when this pandemic starts.
Yeah.
Like, back to, will we go back to normal, or will there be a new normal?
There'll be a new
will we wear
one.
masks forever?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
It's kind of mundane compared to what you.
Just
those
valid.
kind of like just that thought. Just like,
I think it's totally valid because I wear my mask every
I
day.
think.
well, it's just I wonder what the world.
I can't wait
I
to.
don't want to
I do
live
too.
in fear forever,
Right.
You know.
I think the same way.
I can't wait to see the communication research that comes out of it, because it's going to be so interesting to see. Like our babies out in public, if they ever are, never see anyone's faces. Like they've only ever seen anyone's eyes, and like we learn to communicate, right? Like and it's
we need to patent the mask with the hole,
exactly,
clear
shield.
But you're right, it's going
handshakes,
to change. It's like
greet the whole thing, right? There's just going to be a
it's
whole
like
evolving
Vygotsky,
of,
he always says like the social comes from the tools and the technology we have at the time, and it shapes us all the time. Like we don't realize how much it shapes us, and how the changing in technology will shape the next generation to be so much different than what it is now. Like
we use the example in one of my classes that like people talk about, you know, everyone has a cell phone in their hand, they're always looking at it, it's blocking people's faces, blah blah blah. But if you look at pictures from when the print came out, like when newspaper first came out, everyone was sitting on a bus with a newspaper in front of their face, and everyone said the same thing about newspapers, right? So it's like, how do we adapt the technology to be to our benefit and our use versus our detriment,
and not we don't necessarily have to demonize it, but the older generation tends to, because it's so far from their experience, and like, just like we do, like I see kids and I'm like, oh my god, these kids, and they're
exactly
like, when did I get this old?
These TikTok dances,
right? Or like I'm going to the grocery store, like I spent $200, got 4 bags of groceries. Like we used to go home and get 25 bags.
That's the equivalent of like a bag of chips used to be 25 cents.
5 cents. Yeah, exactly. That is the equivalent
so true.
of it.
One last.
This has been
it's so lovely. One last. Would you rather?
So fun.
Would you rather sip gin with Ryan Reynolds or shoot tequila with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
God, that's such a hard one.
Isn't it good?
Yes, I love Ryan Reynolds. He seems like the coolest fucking dude to hang out, but I love him.
I know.
He just seems like a whole.
Maybe it comes down to the alcohol preference. I don't know.
I want to say it depends on the mindset I'm in. Because with Ryan Reynolds, I just want to totally shoot the shit and make fun of people. And with Dwayne Rock Johnson, I want to sit down in his office and be like, "Tell me how to get it successful."
Yeah.
Listen, it's shooting tequila, so think of the context of the situation.
You're shooting gin with Ryan, or you're shooting tequila with the
and
Rock.
gin is my drink, but tequila nights are fun too. I don't know. I might have to like decline this one. No. I'll go with Dwayne Johnson.
Ooh,
how un-Canadian of you.
It is
it's
Canadian.
very patriotic. That's true.
That
That's true. There's Nova Scotia roots there.
How about you?
I think especially after watching The Young Rock,
I
haven't seen any
it's a new show.
New Ryan Reynolds shows.
Deadpool's so good though.
But it is good. I think I like gin and tequila, so I think I would want to sip with The Rock, just because I know like his life story.
Well, he could get effed up and he could like carry you around on his shoulder.
Oh,
good
that would be nice.
Good point, actually.
Are
do you want
a
to bench press me? I'm in.
donor?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Let's play on this podcast and be like, listen to our story.
If we did get that sperm, that might actually make another retrieval worth it.
Yeah.
But I say that as not
your
the person.
retrieval.
Yeah,
I say that as not the person who had to do it. So
Jessica, who would you pick?
Well, now you got me thinking Ryan or the Rock could pick me up and carry me around. So I'm
Yes.
kind of like,
But Ryan Reynolds is very handsome.
He is, and he's so funny.
He's so funny.
He's dad.
Yeah.
Blake Lively's gorgeous.
Yeah. The way
You couldn't pay me to shoot tequila, so I'm gonna sip
There
gin.
you go.
I think I'd had to go with Ryan Reynolds because the way him and his wife troll each other on Twitter is just my
I
kind
know,
of
it's
humor. Like I
hilarious.
think that wit is so funny that I just
Same. Like it's
need to
the
be his
exact
friend.
moment of I could be friends with you.
exactly Heather.
Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
say the same thing about Emily Blunt and
Oh, they're so funny. I'd love that to be their friends
John.
too. Krasinski.
I'm like they are that's
They're a
a
super
fun
cool
couple
couple.
friend right there. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ladies,
so
this
good.
has been incredible.
So fun.
So fun.
So fun,
We
yeah.
so appreciate your time. Really, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story. It's been fascinating.
Absolutely.
It's been eye-opening, encouraged.
I was just thinking how helpful this episode and hopeful and
Yeah.
informative this will be to
I
so
hope so.
many, and the fact that someone
Yeah.
would have somebody
reach out
change
to.
Absolutely.
you know,
I
like
want to
like
clarify that the NSHA reached out to Heather and asked her to be a spokesperson in a training for the nursing staff for the
Oh.
new mom
like a-
unit
Oh, amazing.
to adjust
Oh,
their kind of protocols
amazing.
and how they do things, and she got to provide her input on our
Oh.
experience.
Wow.
And she
That's
thought
great.
that was an awesome
Oh.
experience. So like they're trying to do things to
Yes.
adapt to everything. So
And-
yes, I have qualms about the healthcare system, but they're trying
Yes.
to the best of their
Yeah.
ability.
Yes.
And to speak to that, Jessica, to answer to that, we would absolutely, like, people worry about asking questions, ask anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying everyone will be open to having the conversation because for some
Right,
people it's very
right.
private. But Hayley and I are
Absolutely.
at the point, we're happy to talk about it, and we're happy to talk about it any which way possible.
Mhm.
And if people need help
Mm-hmm.
or start navigating it, like, we're down to
Incredible.
Like if
Definitely.
they get in touch with you or something like that, let us
And
know
you're
for
two
sure.
of the most approachable,
Yeah.
welcoming people
Yeah.
I've ever met in my life. So I
Oh,
just know that
absolutely.
anyone
I feel
who
that's
needs
mutual.
to
Mhm.
reach out, like this is a safe space to
Yeah.
do that. I can't.
Yeah,
recommend that enough.
absolutely. And like it's just so much.
Yeah.
Like so happy to do
Yeah.
that.
It's a lot.
And you never
Yeah,
know
yeah,
who's
for sure.
listening to this
Yeah.
episode. Like, who knows if the right person at the right time in the right place hears it, that maybe some sort of change will
will
happen,
make-
right? Like enact change, incite
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
Your story is so powerful.
Yeah,
So powerful.
yeah.
And everyone's journey is unique, whether you have a partner, whether you're by yourself, whether you just decided like this is what your path is. Like everyone's journey is extremely unique. And I feel so blessed that I can do this with her.
Yeah.
Everybody finds their way.
What a team.
Eventually. And
Absolutely.
so I hope
Yeah.
we can shine a little light and hold those in the light that are like struggling, or if anybody has questions, we're here.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yep.
So beautifully said.
Perfect.
Quite
Yeah.
the team.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for chatting with us.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and give us a review. You can find us on social media at The Morning Meeting Podcast and connect with us through email at themorningmeetingpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for sitting around our table.